Aloha Sydzillians! Welcome back to This and That in Stars. For episode 55, we are continuing our trend of doing movie reviews and talking about the Amazon original movie, My Policeman. I watched this film on the same day as I watched Christmas Doodle, so if you have not seen my review on that film, click the link in the description below and watch the previous episode in the series. So the first thing I want to say about this movie is that it actually is a Hollywood level, or at least other company similar, production. I'm not going to list off the entire cast to you, but the number one standout, at least from what I've seen in press, would be getting Harry Styles in the movie. Before we get any further into this review, I just want to quickly say that this movie is definitely not for children. Amazon has their reasons to rate it as 16 plus, and I completely agree. The biggest evidence would be the intimate scenes, in my opinion. If you've ever seen Shameless US, that is the exact same vibe and level of detail that we're getting in this movie. It's not all like most teen TV shows I watch, where the couple is making out and then boom, cut to the end where they're just cuddling. The blankets are pulled up, maybe the men is shirtless, and that's all we ever get. Okay, so let's now talk about the plot of this movie. Even though the video will have spoilers, I'm just going to do this very overarchingly. So the film opens with the older version of our three main characters, Tom, Marin, and Patrick. I don't know how old they are because it wasn't said, but I'm going to guess they're seniors, like 70-something, 80-something. And then those older versions are interspersed with the younger versions of themselves living in the 50s. So Tom and Marin are a married couple, and Patrick is their friend, while at the same time being the secret gay lover of Tom. And basically it's the unraveling of what happens when Marin finds out that they are together. So I'll start off by saying I thought this movie was phenomenal. It was incredible, it was wonderful, amazing, all synonyms similar. I'm not going to talk about a whole lot of scenes from within the film. I'm just going to skip to my least favorite and then favorites afterwards. We'll start with least favorites. And the first scene I want to talk about will require some backstory. So one evening, Tom, Patrick, and Marin are having some drinks after the main event they've just attended. And in answer to Patrick's question, Marin says the number one place she'd love to go on vacation is Venice, Italy. Now remember that, it is important. Fast forwarding later in the film, Patrick has to go to Venice on work. He needs to pick up some pieces for the museum that he works at, and he asks Tom to come with him as his assistant. But also, it's a gay thing that can keep doing, well, without Tom having to run back to Marin and then being on a strict time limit. Now, the reason I hate this scene is because Marin doesn't get to go to Venice. Like the whole Venice montage, so we call it, everything Tom and Patrick ever do, don't get me wrong, it's adorable. They're a cute couple. I love them, they're great. But it's the fact that Marin's husband and mutual best friend are going to her dream vacation spot without bringing her. And also, if I have my timelines correctly, she does know about them being together at this point. She accidentally saw something in the barn the night Patrick had come over to cook them a wedding dinner. So when she receives the postcard from Tom, she burns it, partially out of spite for the cheating, and partially out of spite for the fact that he went to Venice and didn't bring her. I don't know if I would burn it in Marin's shoes, but I can understand being mad if they go to your dream vacation and don't bring you with them. My second least favorite scene in the film is when cops show up to the museum where Patrick is working and arrest him. We learn throughout the film that being queer in the 50s, people will literally get arrested. People will literally get beat up. It's so stigmatized compared to how it is in the modern day. But anyway, the reason Patrick is arrested is because someone anonymously sent in a letter and tipped them off to the truth. Now, I had a feeling that person was Marin. I didn't know for certain, but I had a feeling. And then later in the film, it's revealed that yes, it in fact was Marin. She did do it. But the thing is, she regretted it literally the next day. It was too late to stop it, but she regretted it. So that's why she stood up for Patrick in court, to atone for what she had done wrong. But also, I believe the stronger reason is that she wanted to do this for Tom. She wanted to save Patrick for Tom. It also got me thinking, since there's literally journal evidence, Patrick's diary read aloud in court, that him and Tom were sexually together, why the hell was Tom also not arrested? Like, maybe him having a wife is what saved him. They assumed that Patrick was just using him. He didn't truly like it. He's actually straight. This lady is our proof. Blah, blah, blah. I really have no idea how to explain it. But if Patrick just being himself is a crime in this era, and we have proof that Tom committed the same crime, you should be arresting him as well. And don't say, oh, but he's a cop. No, he's not. They freaking fired him after they found out. He was a cop, but not anymore. Like, it would have been a very different movie had they both been arrested. So I'm sure there was a reason he was saved. But I'm not clear on what that reason was. Even though no one did anything wrong. Like, literally no one did anything wrong. The fact that the courts and the laws and the cops and blah, blah, blah say they did at that time, weren't they both wrong? Like, I will always fight this scene because you either have to arrest both of them or none of them. And ideally the latter, but make it make sense. Calming down from that, let's now talk about my most favorite scenes. And again, I'll do a little backstory before I explain the first scene. When we were seeing the old versions of Tom, Patrick, and Marin, they all together live in the same house because Patrick, who needs lots of doctor care and assistance, has been brought to live in the house of Marin and Tom by Marin's request. Instead of staying in the hospital or living in a nursing home, he can live with his friends in like an actual home. Now, for 99% of the film, Tom ignores Patrick, like the older Tom to the older Patrick, I mean. And I feel like this ignorance goes on way longer than just the second Patrick moves into their house. It's been going on since Patrick was in prison. Marin went to visit him. Patrick asked about Tom, but Tom didn't go visit him. And I mean that in a scene that we literally saw, because there were none. But I also mean that in my implications because of what Tom said when he was standing in the garden with Marin. Remember that scene where he burned the police coat? It was part of that scene. But anyway, getting back on point, after Marin leaves Tom, like he packs a bag and jumps in a taxi cab to go to his sister Sylvie's house, Tom finally goes in to talk to Patrick. They don't actually say a single word, but it's the way they touch and the way they stand and the little head kisses that Tom gives to Pat. Like, I especially loved when they left Pat old and they cut the Tom as the younger self, so it's like Harry Styles on the old guy. That scene was just the most adorable crap ever. Like, oh my god, they're going to be okay, and that's all I need to know, because if they're not okay, what would have been the point of anything? My other favorite isn't any particular scene, it's more of just a general vibe within the film as a whole. Now, I had heard before going into this about the way the sexual scenes were shot, how Tom acts with Marin versus how Tom acts with Patrick. And when I saw the movie, they were 100% right in what I was told. Like the way Tom looks, the way Tom acts, the way we can assume Tom feels when he's with Patrick versus when he's with Marin. Like, oh my god, they nailed it. He always looks so much happier, calmer, freer. Like, the list goes on when he is with Pat than when he is with Marin. As much as he might say, I like Marin, I fancy Marin, Marin is a good person, blah, 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 I feel as though Marin is just being used as a cover-up for his true identity, because again, it's the frickin' 50s. Like Tom's going about it by faking having a wife. Patrick's going about it by freaking being single. And I guess the single had Michael not died, but we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole right now. I think the number one prime example I can give is look at literally every sex scene you ever saw with Tom and Pat. But then look at the sex scene with Marin. His clothes are on. The covers are on. The noises that he makes, like how he makes them, how many there are, the looks on his face, like it's just, I don't want to get into too much detail. This is sex and YouTube will probably ban the video. But like, it's the way they shot it for me that if you didn't know what was going on, you'd have to be an idiot. But you don't just notice it in the private Tom and Pat scenes, you notice it, at least in my opinion, in almost every scene. When you have the three of friends hanging out, the way that Tom looks at Pat, for the most part sneakily, but still, the way he looks at Pat versus the way he looks at Marin. Or a scene when it's just Tom and Marin, the way he acts, his demeanor, his expressions, this, that, the other thing. It's his genuine true self with Pat, and it's not his genuine true self with Marin. That ended up a little more ranty than I originally planned, but hopefully you guys understood it anyway. Let's now move on to my rating of the film, which is going to be quite high, and I'm thinking 9 out of 10 is appropriate for My Policeman. 9 stars. And the reason why I rate it so highly is because there is so much that I loved about it. Like, it's a freaking long list. And there's also very little that I didn't like or that was predictable. The only thing I could tell in advance was that Marin reported Patrick to the police. That was the only thing that I had guessed correctly. Nothing else really stood out to me. In fact, one example of how this movie was unpredictable was in the very beginning when Marin was moving in the old Pat. I didn't catch on that was Pat. I did not understand who this dude was and what he had to do with anything until a little bit of time had gone by and I'd watched more of the movie. That's going to conclude this episode of This and That in Stars. So if you enjoyed the review of My Policeman, please drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new so you don't miss any of my future content. Check me out on social media, linked in the description. And aloha till next time.